Hi Sugar Zaps, welcome back to the studio. Today we're going to be working on the series I'm doing on tapestry weaving, so we'll go over including shed sticks into your tapestry loom and starting plain weave. If you haven't watched the other videos in this series, be sure to check the description below and the videos that pop up here in the corner in the little eye symbol. My name is Brittany. If you're new here, I'm a basket weaver and fiber crafts person. I love natural dyeing, basket weaving, tapestry, and other fiber arts, and I teach those things here on Textile Indie YouTube channel as well as on my website textileindie.com. Shed sticks are something that would be on a floor loom or a small tabletop loom. They allow you to work in a pattern or to lift certain threads at a time so that you can pass your yarn through in one direction all at once without having to pick with your fingers. If you went through the setting up your header video with me a few weeks ago, you can check the description below for the link to that. We did finger picking to be able to pick up our threads, where we went in and we went over, under, picking up each individual thread to pass our threads back and forth. For this video, we're going to learn how to set up the loom so that we don't have to finger pick and so that the process flows a little bit more easily. You don't make as many mistakes because it's already set up for you and you don't have to see the tiny little threads, which just makes it a little bit more enjoyable, because if you're working somewhere that isn't very well lit, or if you're trying to watch a movie while you're doing your weaving or anything like that, where you might be distracted or might not have as much visibility, you can still maintain the correct pattern with shed sticks. A quick note before we get started: if you're working with the PVC pipe loom, and again, video for that in the description below, having a blanket or a piece of fabric or a towel or something to put on your work surface so that it's not knocking around on your work surface is really handy. This does get really noisy as you're working with it, so I like to put something that it can rest on, and that way it doesn't slide as much. I have that set up, and then you're going to need a pair of scissors and a pencil and some sort of beater. And this is just a simple pick comb that I got at a dollar store. The spacing works fairly well for this comb on my ends per inch to pack the layers of my weaving down and keep it all nice and tight. You can get wooden beaters specifically for tapestry weaving or for weaving in general. And there are resources in the description below for these things. You're also going to want the pattern that we're covering in this series. This pattern is a printable PDF on my website, textileindie.com. Link in the description below. You can print this off and follow along with me. This is the cartoon or the image that we're going to be transferring and working into our warp threads here. So my image or my sketch is a little bit smaller than my warp, but that's okay. We'll just incorporate this idea onto my warp threads. I have chosen the colors for my tapestry, so this design, and I'm going to be doing these colors. All of these colors are naturally dyed in some material. I have avocado skins, black-eyed Susan, calendula, cochineal, purple cabbage, madder root. This is the green carrot tops, Osage orange, turmeric, and this is acorn. Lots of fun colors to play around with here, and if you're interested in natural dyeing your own weaving threads, you can check out the description. I have a natural dye playlist where I go over how to do some basics in natural dyeing. Now, with your cartoon, your yarns, your tools, your loom all set up and ready to go, we're going to be incorporating shed sticks. And for shed sticks today, I will be using 2 bamboo skewers. You can do something fancier. You can go as simple as a knitting needle. I happen to have skewers, so that's what I'll be using. I suggest doing something simple, not going out and buying something expensive right away as you're practicing tapestry and getting into it at first. There's no need for a super special tool. I do believe in using the right tool for the job, but often what you have is good enough to do this kind of process, especially if you're starting out and you don't want to invest in a lot of tools. Let's start with the more complex shed stick, and then we'll do the easier shed stick as our second piece. So I'm going to slide my cartoon in between my layers because I have 2 layers of warp threads here. There's the threads that are on the back of my loom and then the threads that are on the front of my loom. And we're just working with the threads on the front. I'm not pulling the two layers together for this tapestry. That is a technique you can do. It's not one that I set my loom up for this time. And if you followed the warping process with me in the warping video, you're going to work in the same way. For this first shed stick, I have my skewer here, and you're going to want the same thread or yarn that you used as your warp thread. So I have my seam twine here. It's 20/6, and that's the gauge. And I'm going to cut a length that's about 4 inches long. What we're doing is we're going to go in and alternating threads. We're going to pick up every other one. We're going to come in, grab one thread. I'm going to grab the outer thread here, and I'm going to send my length of twine under that thread up and loop it around my finger to create a knot. And I want a 1 inch length here. So from where it's looping around the thread to the knot, I want about 1 inch in length. And you can measure this out or estimate, or even draw 1 inch on your finger so that you can measure it out right on your finger, which is helpful. And then come in and trim down the tails like this. So again, you're going to cut 4 inches, come in, pull on the loop that you just created to figure out what is your next thread. Come in, pick up the next thread. So I have this one, I'm skipping this thread right here. That will be on my other shed stick, and then coming to the third thread in and creating a new loop, measuring out 1 inch before I create the knot, and then trimming my tails. And the reason I'm cutting 4 inch lengths is so that I have enough to wrap it around my finger and create my knot. It does create a little bit more waste, but it's way easier to get the knot in place if you have that extra length to wrap it around your finger and send through the loop. Create a loop on every other thread all the way across your warp, and this will take some time, so go ahead and pause the video to finish this process. I have preset all of my loops here, so we're going to move on to adding these to our shed stick. Once your loops are in place, come in and pick up each of these threads. And the key to this is that you make sure you pick up each thread in consecutive order so that they don't get twisted. So I'm going to come into the edge here and make sure that I got the right thread, stick my skewer through that loop, and then come in and make sure I get the next thread here. So I'm coming in and lifting each of these up and sticking my skewer through. And you'll do this all the way across until you have caught all of your threads onto your skewer. So here's my shed stick. I've picked up all of the loops and loop them all the way across. Now, if you're going to be traveling with your tapestry loom or moving around a lot, storing it around your house in a way that the shed stick might come loose, a great solution to keeping your shed stick in place so that it doesn't just slide out and you have to reset it every time you sit down to weave is to hot glue a button to each end of your skewer. And that will just kind of allow a bit of a catch as it shifts back and forth so that the button works as a stopper. I'm just going to move this out of my way down here while we do the next shed stick. With our second shed stick, we're going to weave the opposite threads that we did for this first one. So before we do that, come in and lift up these threads and just take a look to see that they're all lifting up kind of at the same height. You might need to adjust your knots if some of them are lower than others. And also make sure that you didn't accidentally cross or crisscross any of the warp threads. You want them to run straight up and down along your loom here. So it looks like this guy over here, I need to lift up a little bit taller, so I'm going to change the knot placement, put a second knot to shorten this loop. So that's looking pretty good. Not quite even, but it's hard to get these loops super precise because of the way we worked it. Okay, so now move this shed stick, the one with the loops, towards your weaving, and then with your other shed stick, come in, make sure that you know which ones you picked up the last time, and alternate so that you're picking up the opposite one. So I'm going to come in, go over the first one, under the second one, over, under, and picking these up The nice thing about using a skewer is that there's this point on the end, which makes it easy to glide through the layers and pick them up more carefully. Okay, and then just come in and double check yet again that this is opposite of the first one. In order to work with these shed sticks, if you're working with this second one we put in where it's just under over, there's no loops on the stick, this you'll slide forward closer to where you're weaving and lift up both of your shed sticks. Don't pull on the one with loops, just lift it up so that it's out of your way so that you can create a space and you can find the space between your threads here. When you need to do the shed stick with the loops, you'll move this second shed stick all the way up to the top of your loom so that it's out of your way so that you can lift up the looped shed stick and come in and do your weaving process. Now, before we get started, you're probably going to want to plan out your colors for your tapestry. Color is one of the key elements to a tapestry design, and if you're following the pattern along with me, then you have some basic structure to work with. You can come in and kind of take notes or even make multiple copies of this tapestry printout and color it in to test out different colors and see what colors you would like to do. You don't have to use naturally dyed fibers or dye your own fibers if you don't want to. You can purchase pre-colored yarns, and I have my resource page in the description below for all of my favorite tools and materials, and that includes the wool yarn that I'm using here and some different colors that you can play around with. So make notes on your tapestry cartoon for the colors that you're going to be using and slide this in between your warps. And now we're ready to start working on plain weave, but also building the structure of our tapestry or starting the design, starting to weave. Before we actually start weaving and I show you plain weave, I'm going to show you how to create a butterfly. So I'm working with skeins of yarn, and all of these skeins, because I dyed them, have little loops tied into the skein in order to hold them together. So I'm going to come in and undo all of these loops. I'll show you how to create what is called a butterfly, which is a technique of looping the yarn around your hand so that it's easier to work with when you are tapestry weaving. That will keep the yarn from tangling as well. And pull out a couple loops worth. Try not to tangle this up completely. You can always turn your skeins into balls if you want to before you start to weave to make this part easier. If you have a ball winder or you want to do it by hand, you can do that. So if you have somewhere to hang your skeins as you're working with them, that's really handy as well. I'm going to hang this over here. From the end of your yarn, you're going to grip that between your forefinger and your thumb and separate these two fingers and your ring finger and your pinky and crisscross the yarn between those two sets of fingers and then loop around and back through. So you're creating a figure eight between your fingers. And I'm building a butterfly collection of thread to work with. We're starting with this first stripe, and this first stripe you probably want about 8 to 10 wraps of yarn. Undo a bit of a length so that I can have some to start with, and then loop this tail that you created at the beginning around the center portion. And I'm just going to loop it a few times. You can tie this butterfly together so that it's nice and sturdy, but I find that when you're weaving with sheds, you're weaving so fast, it's nice to just be able to undo it quickly. For plain weave, with our butterfly set up, we are ready to start weaving the first stripes in our project. This tapestry is going to be done in plain weave the entirety of the project, and plain weave is under one, over one, under one, over one, all the way across your warp in one direction, and then back in the opposite pattern the other direction. So if you were over one the first time, you're under one the second time. So it's alternating pattern, basic plain weave. So we finished off the tapestry with sumac when we worked on the header in the header video. I did a few rows of plain weave here at the beginning just to kind of have a starting section here, but now I'm going to transition to the green. So figure out which is your shed stick to start with, and that is going to be the shed stick that you lift up first. Now my tapestry is so wide that I'm going to have to do a number of passes to be able to get this across. So I'm going to lift up the threads and come in, slide my hand through, and then pass the yarn through that section. Lift my shed stick again, making sure I start where I left off so you don't miss any threads. Lift up, send this through under those threads, and one more time. Pass this through like so. And now I'll pull my length through, and I want about 5 inches of tail so I can finish the ends in the structure of the fabric. And then lift up so that your thread is at an angle, and pack it in so that you end up with a bit of ease in your warp. Sorry, in your weft, so that you have a little bit of bubbling, not too much, but a little bit, so that you're not causing so much tension on the weft that you're weaving that it's pulling or going to pull the sides of your weaving in. We don't want tapestries that end up like this and end up looking like an hourglass or just kind of a triangle. Our goal is to keep these sides of this tapestry straight. So now I'm going to move this up, this shed stick with the loops up and out of the way, and move this second one down, lift these up, and pass my threads through for one pass, and then through the next set, like so. And then here on this edge, you want to make sure you leave some looseness here too, so pull a little bit back if you need to, and then come in with your beater and pull it from the edge you're weaving from, so this side over towards the end, and you can gently pull out some of the ease. Not so much that you're pulling it tight yet again, but enough that you can pack it down tight and not have any bubbling. Okay, I'm gonna pass in this direction yet again. So move this shed stick up out of the way, bring your hand across, send your yarn through, picking up where you left off. Like so. Bring it up at an angle and then pack it down. For this first stripe, we're going to go for about 5/8 of an inch of weaving. So go ahead and weave up to that point with this first color, and then you'll transition. We're going to do a total of 2 stripes that are about the same width, and then 2 smaller stripes that are also about the same width. It's a little hard with my hand-drawn sketch here, but that's kind of where we're headed. And each row you want to pack nice and close so that you hide the warp threads. Here we don't want to see the warp threads poking through. That's called lice in weaving. So continue to work with your butterfly. If you need more length, you can come in and on the length or on the end that you're working from, you can come in, and sometimes you can hold, kind of gently pinch the center loop and pull length out if it's cooperating. If not, you can always undo the loop around that center portion, pull out a length, and then you can loop around the center again to keep everything from tangling. There are options for bobbins if you want something that's going to hold your thread a little more organized than the butterfly does. With practice, these work pretty well. But if you want to use a popsicle stick or a specific tapestry bobbin, you can find those from Tapestry weaving fiber art suppliers. They are available. I'd love to hear what colors you choose to do your tapestry project in. And if you ever do one of the projects that I'm sharing here, follow along with any of my series here on YouTube. If you want to share photos in the community tab, that'd be a great way to share with the community what you're working on. Everyone's project ends up looking different, and the choices of colors and the way you combine colors and that kind of thing always is so creative and fun to see and encourage one another. So I'd love to have the community tab here on my YouTube channel be a space for that, where we can encourage one another in our creative pursuits. Please be kind in your comments of others. This is a safe space, and I want to maintain a safe space for creativity and for nurturing learning new things and being confident in trying new things that maybe feel intimidating. So please be kind in the comments. If you're struggling to get your warp to lift up with your shed sticks, bring it closer towards the middle and work from the middle down so you can pick up the threads and send your thread through, send your weft through. And that makes it a little bit easier to raise the height of your warps high enough to get your hands in there. As you're weaving, if you run out of length for the amount of space you have to fill, you can leave the tail loose on the side of your weaving, preferably on the same side that you left the previous tail. And then to get a new length of yarn to work with, create a new butterfly from your yarn and start the end on the same side that you ended your previous bundle on, so that we can tuck the tails and you end up on the same shed pattern as you were working with, so you can maintain that pattern and that muscle memory structure that we've been working in. We'll do the same thing in order to change colors. So I'm ready to change to my next color here, and I'm going to use this calendula dyed yarn, and we'll continue weaving in plain weave, alternating colors and stripe widths until we have this section right here, these 4 stripes woven across in plain weave, and then we'll meet for the end of the video. I was having trouble getting my shed sticks to raise up high enough without the loom lifting up with them. So I just clamped the loom to my work table, and that is keeping the loom sturdy on the table so that I can pull up harder on my warp threads, which is allowing me to lift them a little bit higher. So if you're having that issue, if you have C-clamps or something like this, screwable, adjustable clamps, technical terms, if you have adjustable clamps, you can use this sort of thing. Or really large spring-loaded clamps could work as well. I couldn't get this around my loom and the table, but if you have really large ones, that could work, or something of that nature. Here are the finished stripes on my tapestry. You can see I did 2 that are about the same width, and then 2 thinner stripes here working in plain weave. And this is this first section of the tapestry cartoon that I'm working on. I'll save the next section, the angled weave, for the next video. Check the description below for a resource page for all the resources I'm using in this series to build your own tapestry. All the videos included in this series will be linked below there as well. Thanks so much for joining me here in the studio. If you are enjoying this series, share it with someone that may enjoy it as well, or hit the like button. That really helps it spread to other folks that are also interested in tapestry, natural dyeing, basketry, and other fiber arts. I am very grateful if you do that. Again, if you want to share in the community tab when you have completed a project, I'd love to see your finished tapestry or where you're at in your tapestry, and any project that we do in the next upcoming series, I'd love to see your finished project. You can also tag me at Textile Indie on Instagram, Facebook, and the other socials, and I will get those notifications. I'd love to see your work there as well. Thanks for joining me, and happy weaving. Have fun playing with your colors and preparing or weaving the stripes on your tapestry. See you in my next video. Bye.